I want to take you through an exercise where we are going to use the straight line drawing capacities of Illustrator to create an illustration of a cartoon fish in the water with the word fish above the actual fish itself. Now, when you open this document, it's called Straight Line Fish 1. I want you to first notice this is the final drawing of the fish. It has a body, big, large eye, fins, and these lateral fins for one on each side to help stabilize the fish, and a blue background for the water that the fish swims in. To start this, though, I've created a template up here where you can use this as your tracing thing to guide your line to make the fish. You're still going to draw straight lines, but I want you to get pretty close to a fish without agonizing over is this the right kind of fish or not. So I've made a tracing here. Matter of fact, you can make a tracing of anything. If you have if you're drawing with the pen tool, you have no fill, and the stroke is going to be probably black. You could draw with any color, but that gives you the ability to straight line draw. Now the straight line draw, and I'm not talking about curves, and you have to follow this straight line, and later we'll talk about curved line drawing. But watch my pen point. I click and release, and I put an anchor point there, and then I click and release somewhere else, and a line is drawn between the two anchor points. If I continue this, click and release, click and release, click and release, click and release, click and release. Don't move the mouse, just click and release. Don't pull it, don't move it, just click and release. When you get to the close, you see that little circle that shows up by the pen point? That means you're going from to the last anchor point to the first anchor point, and you're enclosing this shape, and it becomes a shape, not a line. At this moment, that's a line. It isn't anything but a line. Now I can go in here and by this point I can actually close it. And when I click away from it, you can see that I have a shape. Now it doesn't mean anything in particular, but this shape has an anchor point at all of its corners, and with the white arrow you can take hold and deselect it and then click right on the line, not on the anchor points. And you see the anchor points show up as hollow points. You can click one of these at a time and reconstruct that line, or you can pull them around, or you can get hold of two anchor points by doing the marquee around the two, and then grab the line between them, and you can move it that way. You can get a hold of all these anchor points on this side. Every one that you activate, you can now move it. Another way to do that is you can select one and hold down the shift key and select a second and a third one, and then those two or those three will move wherever you're going to pull them. So you can manipulate your line even after you've established it to modify it to where you really want it to be. But it's a closed shape. Now watch when I come down here in the color box. It's a black a stroke and no fill. If I click here and the box has to be active, you know, if it's, let me go back and show you, if it's not active, I do that, nothing happens. But I have to activate the box by clicking on it, and it's now active. And if I do this, I actually get a shape that is a fill, a black fill, and there is no stroke. Now in most cases you end up with a shape without a stroke. You draw with a stroke and then you change it from a stroke to a fill and you have a shape. And that's the best way to make the drawing work. Alright, so let me go back to that being a stroke. Now here's the thing that I did with the fish. I actually drew the fish, and let's call this shape is the fish. If I select that shape, if I want to make a template, which I have done for you, on the keyboard, if I hit the command key and the number 5 key, you see what happens? It changes it to a dotted line guide. You have the guides that you're pulling out, these straight line guides here and here to help you set this thing up, but that turns it into a guide. Be sure as you're working in Illustrator that you do a right click and notice your lock guides is checked. If your guides are, if there isn't a check there, that means your guides are loose and can move around, and you can inadvertently move them, and that's not good when you're trying to keep things in place. But so you need to lock your guides. If for some reason you have to change a guide, you can come here and click on it. That unlocks it, and then you can actually get a hold of this and move it, you know, wherever you want it to be. But as soon as you do that, right click again, or if you right click and you don't see the thing that says lock, you can go up to the view and come down to where it says guides, and then see there's no check on the lock guide. So by selecting this and letting go, I put a check there, and that guide is now locked and I can't move it. You should be aware of that all the time you're working in Illustrator, whether your guides are locked or not. Most often they're locked, but once in a while you might want to move a shape or a line or a guide, and unlock them, move them, then lock them back up again. Okay, so see, that's locked. If I right click, there's lock guides. I'm going to unlock it, and then I'm going to select that and delete it because I don't want it in my drawing. Then I'm going to go back and find my lock guides by right clicking and select it again. And just by selecting it, that puts a check mark on it. If you right click and don't see the lock guides, go to view, down to guides, and there's the check on the lock guides. Now I'm going to not select it, because if I select it now, it turns it off. So I'll just go away, it's locked, and I'm okay. All right, so this fish with its template, or your trace lines, has a guideline running through the nose to the tail, so that we're getting the nose and tail notch in the same place. And it has this vertical guide so that I can center on the page if I need to. We're going to create the body of the fish, this flipper fin on one side and a smaller flipper fin on the other side, because it's further away and it's going to be behind the body. Then there's the eyeball. Let me show you the finished one. It has a black circle, the pupil, a little white circle here, the glare that comes off of a round, wet object. And then the white to the eye is the third circle that's part of this big fisheye thing. All right, now let's do the drawing. Make sure that you have the stroke forward and black and no fill. That would be that. The little red diagonal means it's not a color. And it's click and release, click and release, click and release. Don't move your mouse, don't drag it, don't do anything but click and release to keep straight lines going. So we start at the nose, click and release, come up to the top of the head, click and release, come back down the body, click and release. Start up the dorsal fin, click and release, click and release, click and release. Come down the end of the body to the fin, click and release. Come out to the tip of the fin, click and release. To the middle of the fin, click and release. And we just go through a series of click and releases. Don't click and then move your mouse, because you're going to get a curved line. We'll get to that later, but we don't want to do that. So I'm going to go Command Z and back up. I need to go back to this last anchor point and click on it, so I reconnect my line. So it's like you're drawing with a string, and you have to reconnect it or it won't be a complete shape. So I reconnect there, and then I come down to the bottom part of the body, up to the open mouth or lip, back inside the mouth, and the last line I'm making here, you see that little zero that shows up? That means that I'm closing this line into a shape, and when I click on it, bingo, I've got the body of the fish. The same thing with these fins. Now, because I've pre-drawn it for you, you're seeing where you're going, but you got to remember, if you're making your own shape, you're going to have a idea what you're drawing, whether it's a clamshell or a comb or a tire iron. You still have to have a shape of some sort where you're going to go from. All right, so click to start it, click and release, and just come around the simple shape of this wider at one end fin than the other, and there it is, closed. And then the second fin on the other side is going the other way, and it's smaller, just out of proportion and perspective drawing, and it will be behind the body like you see down here, because it is further away and the body is a solid mass. Okay, so now we have the three parts of the fish. The eye is simple enough to make, and let's notice that there's a center eye here, center point, so I need some sort of center point of reference. So the first thing I'm going to do to create that eye is to come to the fill and make the fill a white. Now I'm going to leave the stroke on for now too, because I want to see the edge of the white eye, but I can't see it without that stroke against the white background. So I get my circle tool, come to this center X right here, hold down the Shift and the Option key, and pull a circle that has a white fill and a black stroke around the outside, so we can see where the eye edge is. The next thing I'm going to do is change the color to a black fill and the stroke to nothing, and bring the stroke back again forward, and then I'm going to put in the black circle, Command and Shift, that is the pupil of the eye. Now the fish eye is pretty large, so it can see underwater where there's dim light. Okay, the last thing is that little white circle out on the edge here, and I'm going to change my fill to a white, and then I'm going to take my circle tool and go right out here to the edge of this, because it doesn't happen in the middle. The reflective round part is on the edge. Shift key and Option key to make a circle grow from the center out, and it's just a small one, and it kind of bites into the eye itself. See how that bites in there? So that it's on the edge of the pupil, and that's that reflective light. Now I want this eyeball to be a complete unit, so I'm going to take my cursor and draw a marquee that picks up just the three parts of the eye: the white background, the black pupil, and the white reflected dot. Okay, when I do that, you see that it joins them all to just these three, not the rest of the fish of the body fish. Command Shift. I'm sorry. We're going to group these together. Command G for group. Command and the G for group. If you want to ungroup them, it's Command Shift G, and that would ungroup them. But for now, being grouped, every time I select it, I get the whole unit all together. So I've got the eye created. Now, the gradation and color of this fish is going from a light underbelly to a medium on the side, and then the top of the fish is dark. That's the way most fish are camouflaged, so that the business of being in the water under the fish or over the fish, you're seeing light or dark or whatever that's there. So what I'm going to do now is gradiate that color. Now, in the color areas, I'm going to pick on that gradient and actually pull it out so it's a separate from the color, so I can see what I'm doing. In the swatches, I've already made this gradient up. If I click on this gradient color, the yellow to light green to dark green, if I click on that, you see here's what I've done in the gradient. I've actually created this light white yellowish color, this mid yellow green color, a darker green, and the darkest green. And we've covered this in the color area of gradients, but that's what I'm doing. And if I want to create a new color, I have to make a copy and hold down the Option key, and I take this bucket and I pull it over here. It's now the same color because I've copied it with the Option key, but I click on this new bucket, click, and that's the color. I might want to make it a little darker, so I put a little more, maybe red into it, and see that color shows up there. And so if that's the way I want to add another color or make the colors I've already made, that's how that's done. But I am not going to change this for now. And that bucket, if you don't want that color, just take a hold of the bucket and pull it down and it goes away. So I'm going to stay with the colors I've already made. Notice too that it's a linear going from left to right, light to the left. Light's always on the left, dark's on the right. I can make it a radial by saying make it radial, and there it is, light in the center going outward to dark. And I've saved that, and you save it by hitting this little button right here, and it will save that color into your palette, into your swatches, so that you can use that again if you need to. Now, having created that gradient, I'm going to put it back in the color palettes, and there's my swatches. Now let me show you how this works on our fish that we've worked on so far. I select the body, and I select the gradient color, the linear. Now it always comes in from left to right, and now you have to take the gradient control tool here and click at the bottom of the fish and drag your little line up towards the top of the fish. And what happens then is it's starting with the yellow, light underbelly, and it's going up into the dark. Now this isn't exactly what I want, So I'm going to try it again. See, down here it's right. It's light belly and then mid-size color and then dark on the top. So I'm going to start down here again with my light color and maybe drag it a little taller up here so that now the light and the medium tones are there, and then it gets darker towards the top. So that works for me. And I say, good, I've got the body done. Now I have to do the same thing to these outward fins. I select the fin. Here is that latest gradient color I've used. It sort of reminds me, or I can go back over here and pick that one. And the same thing, I go up here and I say, okay, to my gradient tool, I want it to be light at the outer end. Click and drag, and you see that little thermometer thing is showing you where your colors are going. And I drag towards the shoulder, and that makes it dark at the tip, or light at the tip and dark at the shoulder. And I'll do that to the other one. Now remember, this one is further away. There's shadow underneath it. I'm going to put the gradient here. Now with this tool I can say I want it to be pretty much dark. So I click out here and drag, and all I'm seeing then, the light yellow and the medium yellow are outside of the fin. And what happens here is that most of the fin is dark because your yellow, and you see the colors here, you can see the yellow and the light yellow and medium yellow green are outside of the fin itself. And so what happens then is the fin is pretty much dark. Now I'm going to select all three of these units, not the eyeball, but the fish body and the two fins, and I'm going to come down here right now and say I want the stroke to be gone, and it's gone. And this one I'm going to put in the back. Now, Command Shift left bracket. The brackets are the keys next to the P key. There's a left bracket and a right bracket. And there are left parentheses and a right parentheses. But, okay, we're going to go Command Shift left bracket. After selecting this, Command Shift left bracket. And that puts that fin in the back layer behind these four forward layers. And so it's actually behind it now, and you see, you can't see through the body of the fish, so it's behind it. So now that we have the fish colored and shaped and where we want it, we can move on to finishing this project. Now I've given you this opening document here as a straight line fish. I'm going to go to this other one that I'm going to ask you to open, the finished fish, and here's where you're going to go with that fish. Now what we've done here is added the word fish, and what I'm going to do is show you how I made that by right clicking. I'm going to unlock the guides and pull this guide down so that it's right on top of the fish, the word fish, so I've got something to shoot for. Now remember, I'm going to relock those guides by selecting it, and the check mark goes back, and so now the guides are locked and they aren't going to move anymore on me. Okay, now we have the fish that we made. Disregard the little piranha teeth here. I'll show you that in a minute. And to see the fish, let's say the first thing I did is I built this back the water in the background. And notice again I've made a new gradient, or in the swatches I have a new gradient, this light blue to dark blue, and I've virtually built a rectangle back here the size of the art board, the 8.5 by 11 art board, and I built this rectangle, and I'll get back to the rectangle. And I'm going to put that rectangle right there behind, well, I made it the size of the artboard, and then I'm going to give it that gradient. And remember, it's in front now because it's the last thing I've done. I've also pulled the gradient from light at the top down to blue on the bottom, and so that's my background water, light at the top, because that's where the sun is. Now it's in front of everything, so I select it, and again that move, Command Shift left bracket, puts it behind. As soon as I get my, let's see here, I've got a, all right, so it's behind it now, So Command Shift right bracket brings it forward. Command Shift left bracket puts it behind. All right, so there it is behind, and I've brought my fish. I've selected the fish and brought it down in size here. Now, if I want to select the fish, I have grouped this fish together. I have selected the body, the right fin, the left fin, the eyeball unit, and even the teeth unit here that I'll show you in a minute. But that's my fish, and if I group those together, Command G, then I can pull a fish and move it around and put it where I want it to be, and in this case down towards the bottom of the illustration. Now the word fish is straight line drawing. Again, now I'm going to deselect everything and show you how I'm going to make that fish. For one, I'm going to draw with black stroke to start with, and I take my pen tool and I just make simple lettering, click and release, and I'm going to make the a capital F, and it doesn't matter too much how it shapes out. It's pretty much like this, and I'm using the top guide and the bottom guide to set this up. If I want to come back later and say, let's see, let's not have that so thick, and move this over a little bit, and maybe these two lines ought to come down just a touch. Don't overwork this thing, but just get it to be so you're happy with a simple capital F. And then you deselect that and start with the eye, and just make a simple eye. Mine's a little wider at the bottom than at the top, but it's a cap eye. See, that circle says it's closed shape. Then I deselect that one and start on the next one. Now, the S is just a simple S. It's sort of a crisscross, and it still reads as an S, but it's not as curvy or as difficult to draw. And that gives you the S, and there's that closed shape. You can either click on the pen tool or deselect it, and then start again with the pen tool to start the next character so they don't join themselves together. The H is just like a couple of eyes. We've already made one eye, not the eye you see with, but the letter I. And then you have to remember the crossbar and the H. And so now you have that closed. And if I put them all together and say group, Command G, there they are. Now, I can change these, they're selected. I'm changing it to the black. I have to go back over here to my swatches, pick my green linear gradient tool, and they all come in. Each one goes left, right, left, right, left, right. But now I'm going to change it and take my tool. I want it light at the bottom, so click here and drag to the top, and you get your fish. You notice you grab this tool and go the angular like that, then the color follows that. But I'm going to go from the bottom to the top, so it's light in the bottom like the fish itself is. And you might try this 2 or 3 different times until you get it to be the way you want it. And then you have the word fish. Now, of course, I made the word here. This word grouped together now comes in here, and there it is. But the eyeball, I just took copied this eyeball and made it smaller. To get a copy of that eyeball, go out of color, Command Y, and then with your white arrow with the plus, just select just those portions of that eyeball, and go Command C to copy it onto the clipboard, and then Command V, and you have a whole new eyeball show up here in the middle of the page. And you get a hold of that and move it and put it where you want it. What I've done, go back to color by Command Y again. What I've done is just reduced it in size. It's still a grouped unit. I reduced it in size, and I made a circle, a green circle, and I put the eyeball inside that circle, just as a decorative thing for the eye, because the eye can't have a dot on it. I don't know that I like the eye there. If you don't, you can just select that and take it out and leave the dot or not. But for now, I'll leave it. Okay, to finish this off, then I made a little white circle that is an air bubble, and then hold down the Option key and just start clicking and keep the Option key down and just keep duplicating that bubble, and up they stream, and you can go across the word fish. Now I don't need those extra bubbles, so I'll just leave what I have there, but you just make a copy. You just make one, then hold down the Option key and click and drag and click and drag, and you know, a new one, a new one, a new one, a new one. Just keep making copies and have it float up here towards the top. The teeth, to make it look like a little piranha, is simply this. You take your drawing tool and you draw, you know, start here, click and release, click and release, click and release, and you make these series of V-shaped or tooth-like, and you get here and come and click to there, and then you close that shape, and you have this shape that looks like that. Oops, let me get hold of it. Okay, I'm going to bring it forward so you can see it. That's what the shape looks like. Now, what you need to do is get it behind. You don't want to take it behind the water per se. Well, if you hit here or select it with the white arrow with the plus, because these are joined together. The white arrow with the plus allows you to select something that's been joined with other things as an individual unit. Now, if I go Command Shift left bracket, it goes back behind to where it was. It might go behind this blue thing, and then you have to select the blue thing and put it in the background. Command Shift left bracket. So you have to fiddle with that and make it work. Now, the last thing I want to show you here is that I have, in fact, if I go to Command 0, that's going to take my page back to the size it fits in my screen. Command negative drops it down one little punch, so you can make them smaller or bigger. Command positive makes it big, so I can see it on my screen. The last thing I want to show you is that I have selected the fish and all its parts, and I have given the fish part a little stroke here, gray, not white, not black, but a medium gray. If I go to my color thing, you can see I'm like 10% on this gray on this stroke. Now what that does is it gives me a slight line here that isn't getting in the way, but is helping to define the fish against the dark colors behind here. And even up in the word fish, I've given it that light 1-point gray stroke. I don't usually use strokes unless I'm trying to show the difference between two colors that don't have a high contrast, or that where this helps, I'll use it, but for the most part I don't use this stroke all that much. But here it's helping to define the fish as it comes out of the water. So that's the straight line drawing and assembly of an illustration. Could be used for a menu, for a calendar, for children's stories, whatever. But you have a shape, you create the shape, you put color to it, and all this is done with straight line drawing, which is click and release, click and release, click and release.